I'm Samantha Reed, 27, and I never thought an ordinary Tuesday afternoon could unravel the rhythm of my life. For the past 3 years, I'd been with Eric Green, 28, and for nearly 2 of those years, we'd shared an apartment filled with the quiet intimacy of our routines, morning coffees, weekend brunches, and spontaneous road trips that made me believe in the ordinary magic of love. I thought I knew him. I thought I knew us. At 6:42 a.m., my phone rang. It was my mother, voice trembling, words clipped and sorrowful. Samantha, your grandmother. She passed away peacefully in her sleep. I froze. My grandmother, my constant, my teacher, my confidant, was gone. She had been my mother in so many ways after my own parents' divorce, guiding me, loving me, making every milestone of my life brighter. I immediately called Eric, my heart still raw from grief. "Babe, my grandmother passed away this morning," I said, voice cracking. There was a pause. "Oh, when's the funeral?" he asked casually, almost detached. "This weekend," I replied, swallowing a lump in my throat. "I'm in charge of arrangements since I'm the executor. Saturday, 11 o'clock a.m. "I'll call you back," he said abruptly, and the line went dead. I spent the day in a blur. Funeral home calls, family notifications, coordinating flowers, arranging the service. By 2 o'clock p.m., everything was set. I texted him the details. "Funeral, Saturday, 11:00 a.m. I'll send everything you need." At 5:18 p.m., his reply arrived. "Can't make Saturday. My Coachella tickets are non-refundable. Your grandma would totally understand. I'll light a candle for her at the festival. Sorry, babe." I stared at that message for a long, frozen minute. The woman who had taught me to drive, cheered at every recital and soccer match, supported me in college, gone. And Eric, he chose a music festival over paying his respects. I typed back, "Understood." But it wasn't understanding, it was betrayal. That night, I pulled up my grandmother's will. Her estate totaled around $180,000 after selling her house. Most of it was destined for my mother and uncle, but $40,000 was specifically earmarked for her grandson and his future bride, to help start a life together. My grandmother had adored Eric. She had invited him to book clubs, taught him recipes, even called him family. And yet, the person she loved and trusted chose tickets over her funeral. As the executor, I had discretionary authority over that conditional bequest. I called the estate attorney, my grandmother's lawyer of 30 years. "Quick question," I said. "If the couple isn't married when the estate closes, that specific bequest reverts to the main estate, right?" "Correct," the attorney replied. "Perfect," I whispered, a chill running down my spine. I hung up and began documenting everything, screenshots, timestamps, the whole conversation. Every word mattered. Saturday morning came. The funeral was beautiful and sorrowful. Over 100 people attended. My mother wept openly. My uncle gave a stirring eulogy. Yet the question lingered in every tight-lipped smile and awkward glance. Where was Eric? He didn't come. My grandmother's best friend hugged me and whispered, "If he isn't here for this, he won't be here for anything." I returned home, exhausted and hollow. 32 messages from Eric awaited me. How did it go? "Miss you, BW." The audacity. He was already moving on, thinking about venues, deposits, and money. My grandmother had been buried 4 hours, and he was planning a wedding on her dime. I turned off my phone, ordered pizza, and tried to rest, but the weight of betrayal clung to me like a second skin. Inside, a storm was brewing. A storm that would test my moral compass, my heart, and my ability to defend the legacy of the woman who had raised me. I realized then, as I stared at the framed photograph of my grandmother smiling warmly in the living room, that life had changed forever. Not just because she was gone, but because I had seen who Eric really was. And this was only the beginning. Sunday morning, the house was silent, except for the occasional clink of cutlery and the hum of the refrigerator. I sat at my grandmother's old oak desk, laptop open, rereading her will. The words felt heavier now, weighted with grief and moral responsibility. $40,000. That was the amount earmarked for Eric and his future bride. But they weren't married. And given what had happened, given his choice, the bequest was conditional. I scrolled through my phone, revisiting every text, every time-stamped message. Can't make Saturday. My Coachella tickets are non-refundable. Your grandma would totally understand. Each word felt like a knife twisting slowly. The casualness, the lack of respect, it burned. I had a choice. I could ignore it, pretend nothing had happened, keep the money aside, and continue planning our future together. But my grandmother had taught me the importance of standing up for what was right. She had raised me to see people clearly, to recognize selfishness, even when cloaked in love. At 6 p.m., I called the estate attorney. Heads up, I said. If the couple isn't married when the estate closes, that bequest reverts. I intend to exercise my discretion. The attorney chuckled softly. Sounds like she raised you well. You have full authority. I leaned back in my chair, feeling a mix of grief and vindication. Documenting everything was essential. This wasn't about revenge. It was about justice, respect, and honoring my grandmother's wishes. Monday morning, I sent Eric a message. We need to talk about the inheritance. Hours passed, no response. Later, he showed up at the apartment, casual, smiling, carrying the weightless confidence of someone who thought he could charm his way through moral failure. Babe, he said, stepping into the living room, we need to discuss the inheritance. My dad says, No, I interrupted, my voice cold. We don't. He tried to reach for my hand. I recoiled. Eric, do you realize what you're doing? You skipped my grandmother's funeral. You chose a music festival over someone who raised me, who loved you like family. His face fell into mock hurt, as though my anger was dramatic theatrics. It was only $850, and I lost a lot if I didn't go. She would have understood. It was just one day. One day? I echoed, voice trembling with restrained fury. She spent her life showing up for everyone she loved. I was there when she needed me last. And you? You chose a festival over her grave. He sighed, shifting uncomfortably. Look, I didn't think it would matter that much. Not matter? Not matter? I repeated, pacing. You don't get it. And because you don't, you won't get anything from her bequest. Not a single cent. His jaw tightened. What are you saying? I'm saying the bequest was conditional. We're not married. You failed to respect her memory. I have discretion, and I'm exercising it. You are formally excluded. Eric froze, disbelief written across his face. You can't do that. I already did, I said, voice steady now, the fire of conviction burning through my grief. I documented every text, every excuse, every choice. This isn't personal, it's principle. And my grandmother would have wanted me to do exactly this. He ran a hand through his hair, muttering, You're being dramatic. Over $40,000? I shook my head. It's not about money, it's about respect. About showing up when it matters. About honoring those who raised you, taught you right from wrong, loved you unconditionally. That is what she valued, and you failed. Eric turned away, storming out of the apartment. I didn't watch him leave. I didn't need to. Inside, I felt the first real spark of empowerment since the funeral. I had done what was right, even when my heart was breaking. Later that evening, I double-checked with the attorney. The exclusion clause was formal, legal, ironclad. Any attempt by Eric to claim the inheritance would be baseless. Every text, time-stamped and saved, strengthened my position. As I sat in the dim glow of the living room lamp, I realized something crucial. Grief had brought clarity. Betrayal had revealed truth. And from now on, I would never let anyone, not even someone I loved, undermine my values or my grandmother's legacy. The storm was far from over, but I was no longer powerless. Monday evening, Eric appeared again, this time lingering in the parking lot until I arrived. My heart hammered, not from love, but from anticipation of the storm I knew was coming. I think we need to talk, he called as I walked toward the building. No, we don't, I said, stepping inside. He followed anyway, his expression a mix of frustration and entitlement. It's about the inheritance. My dad says... I cut him off. I already exercised my discretion. You're formally excluded. That money isn't yours. Not because I said so, but because you chose a music festival over my grandmother's funeral. Do you understand what that means? Eric laughed, nervously, trying to charm, to twist reality. It was just one day, Samantha, one mistake. You're throwing away 3 years over one day? 3 years, I echoed, voice rising. You couldn't give her one day. That day mattered. My grandmother raised me. She taught me how to be honest, how to love, how to respect people. And you? You chose a festival. That's not a mistake. That's betrayal. His face hardened, then softened, then hardened again. He leaned closer, voice low. Babe, I know I messed up. I can make it up. I can. I stepped back. There's nothing to make up for. You've shown me exactly who you are. He straightened, suddenly defiant. Fine, but there's something you should know. His eyes flicked away, avoiding mine. I'm pregnant. Time froze. My chest tightened. What? Yes, he said, fumbling. I took a test yesterday. I'm carrying your child. This changes everything. We're getting married. And the money. We need that money for our future. I stared at him, incredulous. The audacity, the manipulation, the lies. My grandmother's voice echoed in my mind. Trust your gut. Don't let anyone take advantage of your kindness. Even if you were pregnant, I said slowly, my voice icy calm, I still wouldn't marry you. And you still wouldn't get the inheritance. You would abandon the child. You've already shown where your priorities lie. That's not a future I want. Eric's face went pale, then red, then furious. You're insane. No, I said, stepping closer, voice unwavering. I'm finally seeing clearly. You lied. You manipulated. You betrayed the woman who raised me, and I won't let you hurt me or my grandmother's legacy any longer. He lunged toward the counter, grabbing his bag, spilling tea in frustration. You'll regret this. That money is mine. I shook my head, voice resolute. It was never yours. You were never my spouse, and now you never will be. He stormed out, slamming the door so hard the hinges rattled. Silence followed, and for the first time in days, I felt a strange calm, a mix of grief, sorrow, and the clarity of moral victory. Minutes later, his mother called, hysterical. What did you do to my daughter? I explained, firmly and without apology, that she had made her choices. The inheritance was conditional, legally and morally justified, and her daughter's entitlement had no basis. By evening, I had everything in place. The exclusion clause was finalized, and Eric had no legal recourse. My grandmother's wishes would be honored, her legacy protected, and for the first time, I felt the stirrings of liberation, the bitter taste of betrayal giving way to the sweetness of justice. I sat back, exhausted, heart raw but determined. The confrontation was over, but the lessons it had carved into my soul were permanent. Love cannot survive betrayal, and respect must never be optional. And I knew deep down that the future, my future, would be mine to shape. 3 weeks later, the final act approached, the reading of my grandmother's will. The small conference room at the attorney's office smelled faintly of polished wood and leather, an austere backdrop to the storm that was about to unfold. I arrived 15 minutes early, my mother already there, eyes wet but proud. My uncle and aunt followed, filling one side of the long table with quiet support. At 2:04 p.m., Eric's ex-girlfriend, his former fiancé, walked in, flanked by her parents. She was dressed conservatively, hair pulled back, minimal makeup, playing the part of the grieving almost bride. Her mother's eyes were daggers, her father's expression smug as though he'd found a loophole. The attorney entered, papers in hand. Thank you all for coming. Let's proceed with the reading of the last will and testament. Standard bequests were read first, each one punctuated by soft nods and whispered approvals. Then the moment arrived. To my beloved grandson, the attorney announced, I leave $40,000, my grandmother's wedding ring set, and a separate letter to be delivered personally. I felt my pulse quicken. Eric's ex leaned forward, eyes gleaming with expectation. The will originally contained a provision for $40,000 to my grandson and his bride-to-be, the attorney continued. However, no marriage has occurred, and the executive has exercised discretionary authority. This bequest reverts to the primary beneficiary. Her mouth fell open. Shock, disbelief, fury, all flickered across her face. The attorney held up another document. Pursuant to the executive's authority under Section 7 of this will, the following individual is formally excluded from any claim to this estate. X's full legal name. Reason: failure to attend the deceased's funeral services, choosing instead to attend a music festival. This demonstrates fundamental disrespect and disqualifies her from any benefit under this will. The room went silent. Her mother began sputtering. Her father opened his mouth, but no words came. She shook, disbelief morphing into rage. You did this on purpose, she shrieked. That money is mine. No, I said calmly, my voice steady, the calm of moral certainty wrapping around me like armor. That money was left to me as my grandmother intended. You had one chance to show respect and loyalty, and you failed. The attorney smiled faintly. Legally and ethically, this exclusion is fully supported. All documentation is on file, including time-stamped communications. Her mother's protests faltered. Her father's jaw clenched. She slumped in her chair, silent now, the fight drained from her. I sat back and exhaled. For the first time in weeks, I allowed myself to feel the weight lift, the grief, the betrayal, and the anger giving way to clarity and justice. 3 weeks later, the inheritance landed in my bank account. I used it as my grandmother had intended. The down payment on a small, sunlit apartment with 2 bedrooms and a yard. A place of my own, a space where her memory could live in every corner. Her letter, shaky handwriting and all, now hung in a frame above the mantel. Family is who shows up, not just who says they will, but who actually is. Life moved forward. 6 months later, I began dating someone new. Kind, grounded, and present. On our 3rd date, she asked about my family. I told her about my grandmother, about the lessons, about the values that shaped me. And I felt, for the first time, a sense of peace. The woman Eric X had been is gone from my life. What remained was clarity. Betrayal exposes character, respect defines legacy, and love cannot survive manipulation. My grandmother's voice, her teachings, and her unwavering belief in doing what is right guided me every day. She had left me more than money. She had left me the wisdom to recognize who deserves a place in my life, and the courage to enforce it. I smiled, sipping tea in the quiet of my new apartment, knowing that she would have been proud. Because in the end, I showed up, not for the money, not for recognition, but for the values she had instilled in me. And that finally was worth everything.